When we start working with hyperlinks and images, we need to be able to point from one file to another file, and usually within our own site's folder structure. To do this, we can make use of paths. Paths within a site are considered relative paths. Furthermore, we can use document relative paths and sometimes site relative paths. To start demonstrating how to use paths, we'll create a simple navigation for this small business website. We want to add a navigation list that points from this page, the home page, to each of the other main pages in this site. So we have a list of those pages here, and we'll add hyperlinks with placeholder references around each item. Now let's look at document relative paths, since they're the most versatile and usable in many contexts. With document relative paths, we're going to be starting in one file and providing a path from this file to another file. The simplest kind of path is from one file to another file in the same folder. That's what we need for most of these, since our current file, index.html, is in the same folder as the news, about, and contact pages. So for each of these peer files, we can simply enter their name and extensions, about.html, news.html, and contact.html. For this first link, we want to point to the home page of this site, which is the file we're currently in, index.html. That might feel strange, but it is totally normal, and what we need to do in order to ensure that if a user clicks on this link while on this page, they end up right back on this page again. Let's check the result in the preview. When we click on each page, hyperlink, we're taken to that page, but since we don't have the navigation entered on those pages yet, we can just click back to get back home. This technique covered most of our pages, but the path to the products page is going to introduce another aspect of paths. For this file, we want to point from index.html to this list.html file. But we can't just enter its name this time because it's not in the same folder as our current file. It's in the products folder. So we have to first point to that folder like this, products /, and then we can enter the file name inside that folder. Notice the products is followed by a /. This signals that products is a folder, not a file. Testing this, we can see we got it right. Note that we can point even further using this same idea. If we want to create a path from this file to, say, the casual men's shoes, that's quite a few folders deep. But it's no trouble at all for relative paths. We just trace the path from our current file down to this one. So our path would trace through the products folder, to the men folder, and into the shoes folder. Finally, we can place the casual.html file at the end. And you can see this path works correctly. When we start working with paths like this, we need to be sure that we match the file and folder structure precisely. Any type error will break the path and leave our users stranded. So type carefully and double check every link you create. So now we have a simple navigation system for this site that we can place in each of these files. We can copy and paste this into the other pages of our site to allow users to move around smoothly between these main pages. However, the products page needs a little more attention. Think about it. When we place these navigation links here, we've changed the situation a bit. We're no longer starting in the outer folder and pointing between peer files. We've moved into the products folder. So now the products page is just list.html. And we don't have the same index, about, news, and contact pages here in this folder. So we need to update these paths so they point outward, escaping from this subfolder and back up to the parent folder. We do this by adding something called the magic escalator, .. before each of these files. This means move out one folder, and then in that folder find index.html. So we need this on each of these root folder files. Testing this shows that we can smoothly move between these files, even though they're in different subfolders. Our users never even know the difference. While we're talking about the magic escalator, note that, just as with subfolder paths, we can point out several layers when we need to as well. So while earlier we wanted to point from index.html down deep to the men's casual shoes file, if we want to point out from this file back up to index.html, we just need a magic escalator for each folder between these files. That's shoes, men, and products, 3 folders. So our hyperlink path starts with 3 magic escalators, and then the desired file name, index.html. And when we check this in the browser, it works out as expected. In summary, document relative paths allow a lot of flexibility since we simply point from one file to the other files, whether they're peer files, in some folders, or out several layers. Just remember when you copy and paste paths to make sure that they match the new context. Another technique we can use when we're working with web servers, such as in Codio, is the site relative paths. But note that this does not work in all situations, so we need to know first whether we're working on a web server that supports them. Codio does, so let's get cracking. Site relative paths are simpler to learn than document relative paths. With site relative paths, we enter the path to the desired file, but always starting from the root folder of the site. This means we can always use the same path regardless of where we are in the site. With this in mind, our paths will have to start with /, then the path through the folders down to the desired file. So here, we just place /index.html to get to the home, about, contact, and news pages similarly. But the product page is a folder deeper, so its path would be /products /list.html. With this approach, this navigation will work exactly like this in all pages of the site. Even when we move into this folder, the site relative path does not change. We always start the path from the root folder. Likewise, when we're many layers deep and we want to point out to the root index.html file, all we have to do is type /index.html. But coming at this file deep in the folder structure from the other direction, pointing from index.html down to casual.html, we have to enter the full path from the root folder, /products /men /shoes /casual.html. So while site relative paths are simpler to learn, the downside is that they can end up being longer than document relative paths. And as mentioned before, they don't work on all web servers. So, use with caution and make sure you know how to use document relative paths as a fallback. If you're testing paths and you find yourself on a broken link page, this means you have a path pointing to a page that doesn't exist. This means that either you have a misspelling in the file name or folder name, or you've missed a layer in the path. Troubleshoot by stepping back in the browser and trying the same broken link again. This way, you know which link was clicked that led to the broken page. Then check out the browser bar on the broken page. In Codio, you'll have a unique domain, but here after the .io /, you'll see the path the link tried to take. In this case, we're looking for products /men /list.html. What's wrong with this? Well, there's no list.html in the men folder, but there is one more layer out. So in this source file, this is the broken path, and you can see it's pointing back just one layer. This means we're moving up from the shoes folder one layer to the men folder, but we need to move one more layer out to get to the right place. We therefore fix this broken path by adding another magic escalator. Overall, paths can be taxing, but it's just because computers can't read our minds. If we're careful to spell paths correctly and ensure they match the desired folder and file structure, things should work out just fine. If not, don't get frustrated. Just look closer.